BierTalk. Gespräche über und beim Bier.
Hello and welcome to another episode of our podcast BierTalk. Today we have a very special episode because we are together with Raf Meert and he is called the Lambic Mythbuster. And that's very interesting because he just issued a book and maybe it's the first one for a long time which really goes deep into the Belgian beer culture and is not relating to the typical traditional stories you read in every other book. So that's really very interesting. So and I'm curious what he will be telling me. To be honest, I bought the book. I could read about a third of it yet because reading English is not so easy for me, but I'm getting through. And it's really very interesting and I would like to share most of it with you, and also Raf will tell a little bit about what he found out. But maybe first you introduce yourself in a short way to the listeners so that they know who is the Mythbuster.
So hello everybody, my name is Raf Meert. I'm 33 years old. I have a master's degree as an engineer architect. Today I also work as an architect and I'm co-owner of a design office specializing mainly in designing public swimming pools, sport accommodation, school buildings. But actually I've been interested in history since childhood. Primarily local history. And so at the age of 16, I started compiling my genealogy. And my roots on my father's side are in the southwest edge of Brussels and also in the city of Brussels itself. And that's where I started to get interested in history. And I also already researched the history of feudal domains, archery guilds and breweries. And so throughout all these years, I became a familiar face at the archival report, where they collect those archives and libraries. And so I built up an expertise for historical research in the old village of Brabant, and also in the city of Brussels itself, in a very natural and informal way, actually. So today, this year, I think it's my 26th year in archives. It's what people call a passion. I need to go a couple of days in a year to those archives, going through old documents. That's my passion.
So other people would say it could have been such a nice life to have swimming pools and sun and maybe a cold beer and all easy. But you like to go deep in the archives and you don't only drink beer, you also research about beer. But is there a beer, like a initiation, or where did you start drinking beer, or did it also grab your attention?
To make something clear, my main interest is the history. So I'm not into going to beer festivals, trying every new beer that's on the market. But of course, I like to drink beer. I prefer at dinner or in a restaurant, I will prefer beer over wine. So I really can enjoy a beer. So that's, but my main interest is history. As I told, that's my passion. So when did I get into beer? Actually my very first beer was a Lambic beer. And I remember very well when I drank it. It was, July the 15th, 1988 on a dreary summer evening. I was 8 years old back then. The occasion was the celebration of the 500th anniversary of the local archery guild. And they served raspberry and cherry lambics from the now closed Allenbos brewery. Here in the village of Schepdaal. But to make clear, the Allenbos brand recently restarted, but the historic brewery site has recently been reconverted into lofts. But so that evening, my brother and I, so that the evening of the celebration of the archery guild, my brother and I held some mischief, and we were able to get our hands on a few glasses of fruit lambics. And we managed to escape our parents' attention, and we snuck to a quiet spot away from the crowd and our parents, and empty our prize with great delight. So at the end of the evening, our parents were surprised to find my brother and myself in a very happy and amusing state. So yeah, that's my first memory to beer, and it was Lambic beer, because I raised in the region of the Lambic beers. So I was born in Brussels, and then I grew up in a village called Sint-Pietersleu. People who know the area a little bit. So the Mario beer, actually today it's only a brand that's left. But I grew up at, I lived at 100 meters from the Mario pub and the warehouses. What's also, some of you may know a pub called the Smiths van Mekingen. It's a very, traditional, but I don't know, it's a correct translation. We call it a brown cafe, so very authentic place. And that's in that time my grandmother was born and raised. So yeah, I'm really into that area of the lambic production. So it's always been present in my youth, lambic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and I think it's also good because now we know you liked lambic from the first time you tried it.
Yeah.
So you are totally out of the idea. Maybe you want to bash lambic, so you really like it.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because people have sometimes difficulties. You call me the Mythbuster, so I say this and this is wrong on lambic history, but this has nothing to do with the beer itself. It's for me, it's telling Lambic's history correct is for me showing respect for the beer and its history. That's my main purpose, my main goal. So that's I will not say Lambic is a bad beer. It's not a good beer. That's complete idiot.
That's totally right, and I'm also an historian, or historian, and I research a lot about our traditional beer, which is lager beer, and Bamberg and the area around is more or less the home of that. And just a few weeks ago, I had really another very new thing I learned, that lager yeast was not really coming and coming into my area, and then it was there. No, it was a strain, and this came, and then it came together with the top fermenting yeast, and then it formed what we have now, the today high potential lager yeast, which is a very big difference also in the storytelling, because now we have a link in between, and it's also interesting, and also people look and think, and because it's the same. There are lots of myths and ideas and stories and persons, historical persons, whatever, and but maybe in my view, the Belgian beer history is both old and young, because if you think of Belgium, it's a country, it started in maybe 1830, and then you had the bad days with the wars, where a lot of the beer culture was destroyed, and then we had the industrialization, and we had the total renewal after World War II, and so everything was like a restart, and I think that made it a lot impact to the Belgian beer culture. And also what would be interesting for me, how it was before, when we had more or less this greater Netherlands area, whatever, if there was it more a Belgium, or was it more a Dutch or French Dutch or whatever beer culture. So maybe you tell a little bit about what is the origin. So when would you say we can start to talk about the Belgian beer?
Ooh, that's not so easy question, because I'm concentrated on lambic beers, of course. But something particular is that you talk about Belgian beers. Let's say before mid 19th century. there was a way of defining beers in Belgium, the Netherlands during the Dutch period, to make a distinction for beers by the place where they were produced. So every major city in Belgium, Flanders, had its own beer. And yeah, it's explained by the pure yeast didn't exist at that moment yet. Explained by the microbiologic environment of each city, which was a little bit different. And so yeah, you have the beers from Hoegaarden, Leuven beers, Lier, Antwerp. So they have Mechelen, Dist, the city where I live now. People could order in a pub in Brussels, for example. People could order a beer, a Disters beer or a Leuven beer. Yeah, I know what you mean, because today Belgian beer has a certain status and quality level label in it. But I don't think, for example, in the 19th century, that existed already. Except once again for Faro and Lambic. Those were beers that were exported to America at the end of the 18th century. There are references of Faro Lambic in Paris, mid-19th century. So, it was were the Lambic beers, maybe it's because I focused on that, but that's for sure that Lambic beers were exported to other countries in Europe and overseas.
So we could say more or less that the Lambics and Faros were the first very regional defined beers from what is today Belgium. So because the other beers were just the top fermenting beers which existed everywhere, depending on the water and depending on the yeast and depending on the raw materials. But Lambic was something special which not existed in other places. Can we say this?
No. It was something very, very, very special. Yeah. It's quite amazing or astonishing, surprising. Yeah. To export those beers to America. That's, very, very early in history. So, yeah.
So how did it start? So, because when I read your book, you also say what we today understand what is Lambic, which means maybe 30% of wheat and maybe the wood thing and whatever. It's maybe a modern thing, but it's not the original thing. So if I would ask you what was the start of this Lambic culture, maybe also the place of the start. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
To me, that's the major conclusion of my work. To me, it's always represented as a peasant beer, so that it came into being on the countryside. But as far as I can conclude from work in the archives, the earliest reference of Lambic, the name Lambic in the beer context, is in the city of Brussels. And that's maybe difficult to understand, because in the mainstream theory about Lambic history, there's always been told that the reference, the connection with Bruegel and his paintings and people working on the field, drinking large amounts of Lambic all day long, that image is not correct related to the origins of Lambic, where it was not a common beer, but very clearly a very luxurious beer that cost a lot of money, and a workman could not afford Lambic in large amounts, large quantity. So it's very important to understand that 200-300 years ago there was a major distinction between beer for daily consumption on a basic ratio in a way to get enough calories to provide to work, and beer that was drunk for pleasure, luxury beers, and so on. And so Lambic was part of that category of luxury beers. That's something very, very important to. So that's very important to understand how Lambic came into being.
What did the people drink normally? Which beers then?
Yeah, it was a beer that was called white beer. So it was a beer that was not cooked for very long, contained a lot of unfermented sugars, low alcohol, of course. Yeah, that was a very basic beer, actually.
And was that what we call Faro now?
No. No, that's another myth or misunderstanding. No, you must understand that during almost the entire 18th century, Faro was the strongest beer brewed in Brussels. Yeah, I know that. That's why I say we totally need to rethink Lambic history. We need to look in a different way to Lambic history.
But there was a connection between Faro and Lambic, or was it a totally separate beer?
No, but it's important to understand that Faro existed already before Lambic. And so today, in today's view, the mainstream view, Faro is made from Lambic. So it's lowered in alcohol. But originally, first there was Faro, and then beer was brewed stronger, and then they became Lambic. So until the mid 19th century, you can find recipes brewing Faro directly without brewing Lambic and then lowering it in alcohol. So the Lambic came into being. So there is an evolution during the 18th century of brewing beers stronger. Before 1700, there are no references of Faro in Brussels or the Brussels area. And then at that moment, the strongest beer was called double, because the price, there was a regulated price in the pubs. And so people had to pay 2 stivers for one jar of a pot of that beer. So that beer was called double. That was the strongest beer before 1700. Then first there's Faro, that was stronger than double. And then at the end of the 18th century, there is Lambic that was stronger than Faro and stronger than double.
So it more or less overtook the Faro.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So Lambic is stronger than Faro. Yeah.
And Geuze, is there any connection to the place of Lambic or to this Arab distilling device? No.
Distilling device, yes, but not to the village of Lambic. I don't know. I don't have any references of early references, because afterwards Lambic was brewed all around the countryside of Brussels. But the earliest references of Lambic as a beer is in Brussels, in the city of Brussels. So that, to me, that Lambic village connection, it's nothing more than a myth.
There may be people unhappy with that.
That's difference between myths and trying to reconstruct an historical reality.
Yeah, and what about the ingredients? Today we say it's that quite big part of wheat. Has that always been the case, or
no?
Okay,
no,
it's not for me today.
No, not the amount of wheat today. Actually, the most original recipes, the earliest recipes dating from 1800, there was even more wheat in it, double as much as today. So today they will say 1/3 of unmalted wheat, and 2/3 of malted barley. But the most original recipes of lambic were the opposite: 2/3 of unmalted wheat and 1/3 of barley malt. And so during centuries, years, the amount of wheat lowered.
That's very interesting because I heard a talk of the brewer of Brasserie de la Seine, Ivan, and he said, okay, maybe there is even a connection between the Berliner Weisse, which existed in Germany, and the Witbier, which was in Belgium, because they were maybe similar. And if you look in the Berliner Weisse history, we also have a huge part of unmalted wheat, and also some sourness. And if we put away the idea of wood, they are really very close together. So maybe my idea was maybe everywhere there have been maybe more or less barley-based beer and wheat-based beer or mixed beers, whatever, and they evolved in some ways.
Yeah.
And with modern maltings and all these things, now we have our today beer styles. But before, that was more or less a cloud of beers, which not defined beer styles, because maybe people didn't think about a beer style, they thought about a beer, which they made with their traditional idea. And if they had to change because there was another grain or whatever, then they did, because they didn't have any other idea. So,
But there's something also very important what lambic originally meant in beer history. That is its capability to storage. And so the beers you mentioned, the white beers, I don't know how long they kept well. So you can say, okay, it's the same ingredients, but all 19th century references will say the same, tell the same. They say, do not touch lambic for 2 years. You have to leave them in the casks for 2 years. And I don't know the comparison to white beers, Berliner Weisse, it's the same ingredients, but it's totally different beer, I think. What was the purpose of that beer? Because that's something interesting. Because those white beers in Belgium came from the most famous is the region of Leuven, Tienen, Hoegaarden. So there are references from the 19th century saying that during summer, Faro is too heavy, too strong to drink. So people in Brussels preferred those white beers from the Leuven during summer months. So they were transported from Leuven to Brussels to drink it in summer months.
So there's also a connection to saison then, maybe? No.
Yeah. But it was more refreshing. Those white beers were considered more refreshing during summer times than Faro was too heavy, to contain too much alcohol.
And where did the name Faro then come from?
To me, Faro refers to Pharaoh, meaning king. And if you can accept that Faro was the strongest beer brewed in Brussels 18th century, then Faro was the king of the beers. It refers to strength to me.
It's a nice news story.
Yeah.
Maybe it's true. Yeah.
I do not invent that. There are written sources, I think, from 1825. The first one telling about.
And so you would say the name of Lambic then is from the distilling device, or is there any other?
Yeah. Because if you look at Lambic at the end of the 18th century, it distinguished itself from other beers by his clarity and his strength. So that are two qualities that are related to brandy, distilled drinks. So I think, that's where the connection with the distilling device comes from.
But not the story about taxation and all these things, which is also told that there was a special taxation on distilling devices, and then that was taken over by the brewers and things like that. So, okay.
I don't think so, no.
All right. And what about the wood? Was there always wood with Lambic?
Yeah, because when it came into being, there was nothing else than wooden casks. Yeah.
So also spontaneous fermentation was also always there.
Yeah. But the difference is that if you look at old references, descriptions of the brewing process, they will always mention that, especially mention that no yeast was added. So from the cool ship directly into the wooden casks. Yeah, and that's something that is particularly mentioned with Lambic beers. If you look at old brewing manuals or books, something like that, yeah.
I was at Rodenbach some months ago
Yeah.
with Rudy, and we saw the old cool ship, and it has that very special shape on the roof, which he told me was made that you can open or close it depending on which beer you brew, and prohibiting an infection of the beer if you close that because of the special shape. Does that also add to the idea you think Lambic was?
I did not find any references to that, no. I think originally it was very primitive under a roof, nothing more than that. A wooden, also in wood. The first cool ships were wooden.
We also have these old wooden cool ships here in the museum. Mostly they are round in the shape. So and of course wood, it contained whatever. So maybe back to the process of your book. Was it? Did you first have the research results, or did it came also a bit by writing, or how did the research go? Did you go to the classic Lambic people and had the stories, and then you tried to bust them, or how did that go?
Somebody asked me. I think it was 2 or 3 months before the release of my book, and I told him I'm writing a book about Lambic. And then he asked me, interesting, which brewers did you visit? And I said none, because, to me, finding information about history, you have to go to the archives, libraries. That's where you can find information about the history. So that's, as I told you in the beginning, my passion is that history research thing going to the archives. So I had an amount of collected some information, so I got a clear view of the head lines. Okay, this is more or less how Lambic came into being. It's history. But then actually during the writing, I did some extra research because, at the beginning, I did not know where I would end. And I never thought that I would write on it for 3 years. So I think, it was something, in 1 year this is finished. But that was a mistake. Yeah. So, the questions come by writing and reading, and then I think I goes a little bit deeper in that, and then
And when did you realize that it's a bit like a minefield because of so many stories which are connected to today breweries and brewers? And
there are 3 major parts in the book. One is about the myth busting, as you call it. So saying it's an overview of what's already written or told about Lambic, and then I give some comment on it. The second part is about the earliest Faro Lambic Geuze, and then the third part, which is the largest part of the book, it's about the evolution from the original beers to what it is today. And when I was writing that third part, to me it was clear when this is too much for one man, because I made some categories where I describe the evolution, for example, the ingredients, the production area, the what's about told about the spontaneous fermentation, the time which was needed to obtain a good beer, a good lambic beer. So then I realized this is too much, because on each of those topics you can write an whole book. And then I realized, okay, I will give a sort of introduction in all those topics, and then it's up to others to discuss it or do some further research or to put some antithesis against it, something like that, yeah.
Did you have reactions from the brewers, especially those who have their stories busted now?
No. Actually, that may sound very strange to you or people from abroad, but the interest in this particular aspect of Lambic, so its history, comes from abroad. Yeah, the books are shipped all over the world, and people tag me on Facebook, Instagram. They write me personal messages to congratulate me or things like that. But yeah, nothing from Belgium.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it is.
It's a bit sad, but maybe it comes.
Yeah,
maybe
okay,
it comes.
that's how it is.
Yeah, but one question, you just mentioned the topic of Geuze.
Yeah.
Is the relation between Lambic and Geuze also different to that what we normally think, or is that true?
Actually, I write in my book, Geuze is as old as Lambic. The original Geuze is just as old as Lambic, because the original Geuze was nothing more than Lambic straight from the barrel. Nothing added, nothing mixed, not blended. Straight from the barrel with an age 3 to 4 years. And so, yeah, that's another thing. People have some difficulties. The most original Geuze did not need a bottle. There are plenty of references in the book stating Geuze Lambic straight from the barrel.
So you could say the most original Geuze is what we get today as a Lambic.
You can discuss about the recipes, because the amount of wheat was higher. There is also an aspect of the size of the barrels. There's also the aspect of time. It's very important. But let's make abstraction of that. When you visit a Lambic brewer and you go to in his barrel room, he goes to the barrel and he serves you a Lambic 3 to 4 years old. Nothing added, nothing special. That was the most original Geuze. Because that's about what does it mean, Geuze? So Geuze was a prefix meaning unprepared, not blended, not sweetened, nothing done with it. Something like that. Unprepared.
So the historical Lambic was blended or mixed or whatever?
Yeah.
So it was more or less the other way around.
That's because today the most, how would I say, the mainstream view on brewing is you need to make perfect brews. Your brews may not contain any defaults, things that aren't correct in taste or things like that. So the mindset today is brewers have to make good brews in hygienic conditions, everything like that. But if you go 200 years back, for example, in time, brewers were not always able to brew perfect beers because the conditions were different. So brews were made, and afterwards they had to remedy those beers. And that's how that's I call him the ancestor of today's Geuze blender. There was someone involved making the beers better, sweeten them, blend them, clarify them, something like that. There was another process between brewing and serving the beer. And so if a lambic 200 years ago was blended or sweetened.
And when did the switch in these two topics come? Because that's really interesting that we say if originally you had first Geuze and then you made more or less lambic out of it. Maybe you had to or you wanted to, and nowadays it's more or less the other way. Yeah.
There's maybe there's a misunderstanding. And so Geuze is also the aspect of time, is age. So as I told you earlier, lambic was brewed and then kept 2 years in the barrel, in the warehouse. Yeah. At the age of 2, the man who was responsible of the warehouse, which was called in French the préparateur, he tasted samples of every barrel, and he decided what was the use of the barrel. So it could be blended into Faro, it could be blended and sweetened as Lambic Geuze, so literally sweetened lambic. It could be sold as what was called bière de coupage, so it was beer lambic that was mixed with high top fermented beers. And then the last category was the Geuze. So that beer was kept for another year or 2 years, and that was also the in taste the less sour acids lambics. Yeah.
And so it was also the highest quality beer. And that's maybe the reason why it's today also the highest quality beer.
Yeah. There's always be Geuze had a status of higher quality. I call it the reserva of the barrel group. Yeah.
Which is a nice idea. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So it is some brewers stated at the end of the 19th century only 5% of lambic production makes it to Geuze. And at that time, but then Faro, a large amount of Faro, bière de coupage, lambic, sweetened lambic, yeah. Only 5% made it to Geuze. Yeah. The switch to the bottle, that came into being at the end of the 19th century. So what we call today traditional Geuze with the blend of the different ages, that's something, a new definition, I would say, at the end of the 19th century, when there was a lot of concurrence by the German lager beers and the English specialty beers. So then in Brussels, the lambic brewers needed to come up with something new or special, and that's in that period circumstances, Geuze, what we call today traditional Geuze, was born or raised. Maybe it already existed, but then that was its breakthrough.
Yeah. Last question about the history thing. Was there a time when it went out of business and a specific time when it came back? Because as I learned it more or less vanished in the 1960s, 70s. And then there was...
I think the beginning of the 1990s, that was really the worst period for those last remaining lambic brewers and blenders. Yeah.
And then it was more or less Frank Bohn and the brewery he took over, which put it back on the map, or was it a bunch of people? Or
yeah, I think a bunch of people. because you have also Cantillon, Jean-Pierre always continued, Lindemans also always continued brewing. But the thing is, it was very local. It was drunk. Lambic was drunk mostly local. As I remember from childhood, it was something. To me, in my memory, it was a glass of nostalgia. It was drunk at special occasions, village festivals, kind of thing. But not in my memory, it was not drunk every day.
And it was connected with historical brewing processes, I think. So still, when you are at Lindemans and you see this Madammen construction where they make the brewing, or also the old parts of the Beaune Brewery, or in Cantillon, it's more like a living museum. So that's really something connected to old methods of working or brewing. Yeah,
that's something to me. That's something very special when you're referring to the. It almost disappeared. Yeah, it's also, you can also look at it as in there were no means or no money to invest. And that's why we still have those old installations, brewing installations. Yeah, you can look at it in a different way. But today it's something special. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also very similar to some of our countryside breweries, which are more or less still looking like in the 1900s, early 1900s. But and also if you go to England, I think this is especially impressive, because in Germany, for example, but I think also in Belgium or France, you had so much destruction during the wars that they had to rebuild also breweries, and they had to invest and innovate and whatever. But if you go to Great Britain and you go to the old England countryside, there are so many breweries which are more or less untouched the last 150 years, and they're still brewing the old way, and for them it's just normal. That's a very, very big difference to what we find in Central Europe, I think.
That's how the idea came into being, that Lambic originated on the countryside, because that was the situation in the 1970s. I made a map in my book. I think there were at that moment 24 breweries and blenderies on the countryside, and only 2 or 3 in the what was then called the agglomeration of Brussels, so Brussels city and 18 suburbs communities. So actually, by the old Lambic breweries were pushed out of Brussels by making the city more modern, beautiful, things like that. And that's why the most authentic breweries are on the countryside today, despite Cantillon, of course. But yeah.
Maybe last question about the book. If I would ask you, what are your 3 most interesting things in looking back on your work, on your research? What would you say? What are your top 3?
Yeah, the first thing is what I just said. We have to rethink the Lambic, the original Lambic, as the peasant beer. To me, that's a completely false idea. Then the second thing, the Geuze, the most original Geuze. I'm quite certain about that. What the definition of that was. And then the third thing, that's something that I call, you can predict future by looking into the past, because history goes up and down. And so today today Lambic is back on its heights, but that means that there has to must go down again. So that's something that, if you look into history, you can predict the future. That's what I call that.
So you would not recommend to buy shares of Lambic producers now?
Oh, no, it's not about that. But it's about, when it, now it's in high demand. Then there will be, if you look into the past, of course. Then there will be an overproduction, and then there will be some difficulties, to maintain the business, and then if you look into the past, then quality lowered. They did some changes to the production process, and that's interesting to look how that will evolve in the next, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years.
I think a little bit of that you already see, because the prices are varying a lot, and also they are arguing a little bit about that amongst the Lambic producers, and also the idea where is the origin and all these things, and new producers which come from...
If you look at the past month, I think, that, of course, they were preparing their releases and things like that. I think three or even more larger and smaller Lambic producers. So we will see what future will bring.
So also the future will bring a new edition of your book with another chapter or something like that?
Maybe. Or another topic, completely different historical topic. That will also be nice, I think.
Normally, I invite my interview partners to come to Bamberg and to look around, but I think I don't invite you because you will destroy our nice myths about our lager beer. No, just joking. Of course, you are invited.
That's what I told you at the beginning. If you want people to respect what you're doing, your story, the beers you're making, especially when it's an historical beer style, then you also need to respect history. It's nothing more than that.
And I think it's two ideas of the same thing. So because also I'm more historian than beer enthusiast. So of course I love beer and I like beer and I judge beer and whatever, but I'm not the guy who has to go every day to the pub and drink 5 or 6 beers or whatever. So for me it's also more something I like to work with, but I more or less work with. But on the other side, of course, normally it's you look in archives and look for history, but sometimes you have breweries who have a beer and they need a history, and then it's more like a commercial work. Then you find or you create a history and make a nice story for their beer that it sells, which is a different way. But that's also something I was very interested that you mentioned it in the book, because there are many stories in the beer world which only exist because someone like me maybe wrote a nice history about a beer before, and all the people now think that's real and that's the original history, and it's hard to decide which is a make-up and which is a original thing. So.
We're living in difficult times. A few years ago, nobody had heard of something like fake news. Who's to believe today? That's really a problem. Where do you find correct information? The internet,
No, that's also, as Wikipedia is something you can change. It's not so, and it is used as other things too. And I think also in the beer world, when we have this old website, Rate Beer, which was always like a reference, and then it was taken over more or less by a company, and then people don't trust it anymore. So it's hard, but I think that's another topic. So if people want to buy your book, they find it at the normal stores like Amazon or
No. Only at Cantillon and Driefonteinen for this moment, and then there is some interest from distributors, importeurs, in different countries, but I don't have a complete list of all of them. So
But there is a website of you where we can contact you.
I need to finish the website. But there's the Instagram page or Facebook page, and the book is on the web shop of Cantillon and Driefonteinen.
Okay, so we will put these links in the show notes. And the website is that Lambic 1801?
That was Lambic 1801. That was my research project. But now I have another lambicantamed.com. But that's not... it's in the book. The first page in the book. Yeah. But there's nothing on it, so I need to finish it.
Not yet, but this podcast will stay on the internet for a while, so we can update the show notes and we will put it in. So thanks a lot for your time, for the information, and thanks a lot for your work and for the respect and also for the toughness to go through that and for the interest for beer. So for me, it's a very great thing, and I will finish the rest of the book and will be happy to learn new things, and maybe we come back to you at another occasion and keep on talking about this fantastic beer and its fantastic history.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
BierTalk, der Podcast rund ums Bier. Alle Folgen unter www.biertalk.de.